What's up guys, Joe with Strictly Commerce here. Inside of this video, we're going to be going over how much money you need to actually start selling on Amazon FBA in 2023. So like I just said, inside of this video, we're going to be going over exactly how much money you need to actually start selling and turning a profit on Amazon coming up next year in 2023. In this video, we're going to go over common misconceptions about actually how much money you need to start. We're going to go over the different startup costs involved with each business model, such as OA, RA, wholesale, private label, etc. What your money will actually go towards in terms of startup costs and what you need to allocate funds to / what it's most important to spend your money on when just starting. How to get extra funding to start selling and actually scale your business like an expert. So first, some of the misconceptions about actually your startup costs involved with Amazon FBA. It does not take a ton of money to start selling on FBA. Meaning that you don't need thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're actually not going to get overtaken by large sellers. So as a newbie, you could start out with a lesser amount of money and still be competitive with a lot of other sellers. There's actually a lot of things that you can do to stay competitive that don't actually cost you any money, but we'll get into those in another video. Another misconception about startup costs is that you need a bunch of different softwares and that you need, VAs or a warehouse space or anything like that. We're gonna keep those out of it, and you really don't need any of those things to actually start selling. So we're going to keep those costs down to a minimum. So anybody with as little money as possible could actually start selling. So based off of different business models will require different amounts of capital to get started. For example, retail arbitrage, you don't really need a lot of money to start. You can go to TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Ross, and really spend even $100, $200 and start flipping your money that way. You can probably make close to 40, 50% ROI on a lot of items that you find there, although you won't be able to find a lot of quantity. So this is something where as a new seller, you kind of have this advantage because if you have little money, you're going to be somebody that's going to go and actually find out deals where you could make almost 100% ROI on items, even if it's only a few. Compared to large sellers, won't really be spending as much time going for those deals because they want offers that they can make money on 1,000 quantity, 2,000 quantity, monthly replenishables and stuff like that. In terms of online arbitrage, it's also a lower startup cost model because there's no minimum order quantity and you can really purchase as much or as little as you want from these online retailers to buy. Books is one of the easiest ways to get started and actually one of the ways to start out with as little money as possible. If you have $50, $100, even $200, you could start going to Goodwill and you could start scanning literally every book inside the store. You can even buy gaylords of books with a couple $100 and go through them and sell them, and this is where you can make a ton of money. You could also find free books all over the place and go to garage sales to find them, and all you need to do is just use your seller app and scan the items. And that's a way to really start with almost nothing. Wholesale is one of those models, as well as private label, where it does take a little bit more money to get started. With wholesale, your suppliers have MOQs and minimum order quantities that you have to order, 500, 1,000, sometimes even up to $2,500 worth of merchandise before you can actually place an order. Same thing with private label. You can't really start with 10 quantity. You're gonna have to buy, 100 or 1,000 quantity from a distributor in China and have them sent over, which is again gonna cost you probably anywhere from $500 to $2,000 for that first batch. Now we're gonna go over what your money is actually going to go towards when starting Amazon FBA. First and foremost is an Amazon Seller Central account. You can get a free version of this. However, I totally recommend getting the $39.99 a month professional selling account if you're gonna take this seriously. It's well worth the money. And you're gonna need to have this and a lot of the features to kind of get this little venture going. The next thing you're gonna need to purchase is supplies for shipping, boxes, tape, poly bags, stickers, stuff like that. This you can kind of start as little as you need, maybe 50 bucks or so to go towards supplies to get your first shipment out before you actually start getting money back from Amazon. Next, you're gonna need software. This really depends on what you're doing and what you're selling. If you're doing OA, RA, you're gonna need Inventory Labs and Scoutify 2, which comes with Inventory Labs to both scan the items and also send shipments and keep track of your numbers. With books, you're probably gonna need some other software to actually scan the books, but I'm not too familiar with how that works because I've actually never sold books, but you'll need some other type of software, let's say $50 a month. And then overall, everybody's gonna need Keepa. So Keepa's 20 bucks a month. Everybody's gonna need that in terms of being a seller. It's how you track all your data. So total in software to start up, you have roughly $100, maybe max $200 worth of software, and I don't recommend getting anything more than that. Just get the basic, least amount of software that you can to start and keep those costs down to a minimum. You also could get an LLC. If you're doing wholesale, this is non-negotiable. However, if you're doing any of the other methods, you don't necessarily need one to get started, although it's recommended. This will cost you anywhere from $200 to $500 depending on your state. You'll have to look into this at some point if you keep doing this. However, it's not necessarily a required cost unless you're doing wholesale. Now we're gonna go over how to actually get started with $0. So if you wanna get started with almost $0, let's say $100, what you're gonna do is get the free Amazon seller account, and you're gonna start going to Goodwill and scanning every single book that you can. Keep in mind, these books will cost you anywhere from 25 cents to $1.50, or sometimes a little bit more for textbooks per item. Go to the store, scan a bunch of stuff, and go spend $25, $30, maybe $50 on books and send them all into Amazon. This is how you could start with basically like $100 and get your first shipment out. And off of those books, a lot of people do make like 100% ROI. The money is pretty good. You just have to put in the legwork to actually scan a ton of different items to actually find good ones. Additionally, it's kind of a little bit tedious to go through the books, check their condition and stuff like that. But if you're starting with $0 or next to $0, this is the best way to get going. In all these models, once you get your first shipment or so sent in, or you really have a little bit of comfort, maybe a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months worth of selling, I would recommend utilizing credit cards to purchase more inventory. I wouldn't recommend spending anything on these cards that you can't afford to lose, but what I would recommend doing is using these payment terms, meaning that buying the inventory when your cycle first opens and then not having to pay for it until your cycle closes, which will probably end up being somewhere around the time that the inventory is actually sold and paid out to you. So this will help you stretch your money a little bit further as you start. However, definitely keep in mind that this is risky, and I don't recommend spending anything that you can't actually afford to lose. So overall, I think you can get started with Amazon FBA for less than 500 bucks, especially with books or anything like RA or OA. However, my recommendation of how much money you need to start is anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. I would recommend getting your LLC set up, the professional seller account, maybe $100 or $200 worth of software. Right there, you're looking at anywhere from $500 to $700 to start, and then spending the rest of the money on inventory. With wholesale, this will go really quick. With OA, it'll go quick, and as well as RA. With books, you can keep your inventory costs down because you're gonna only be spending, $1 or $2 per unit to actually start selling. But if you have anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, you're in a really good shape to get started. And like I said, if you're going to kind of start with less money or want to start with almost $0, I definitely recommend starting off with books, starting out with as little money as possible. Don't get anything other than the free selling account, and just go start buying books and start listing them for sale, and you will start to make money. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for your business.